Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the 2020 Miners' Day Memorial Service. My name's Andrew Lofthouse and it's a pleasure to be your host for the service today. And before we start, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and acknowledge their leaders past, present and emerging. Family, friends and colleagues of fallen miners. All of our guests watching online, at home and at work. Queensland's mining workers, in particular survivors of mining accidents. Ipswich Council Mayor Teresa Harding, Minister for Natural Resources, Mines and Energy the Honourable Anthony Lynham, Commissioner of Resources, Safety and Health Kate Dupreez, and union, industry and community representatives. And thank you first up to Diane and Philip for lovely music by way of our introduction this morning. I've had the honour of hosting the Queensland Miners Memorial Day service many times, and this year, of course, looks a little bit different. With the public health precautions imposed by COVID-19, this year physical attendance at the service had to be restricted to direct participants only. But knowing how important this day is to miners and their family, the team's found a new way to share it with everyone, no matter where you are. So to our hundreds of guests joining our Facebook online streaming event, welcome. You're invited to share tributes and memories on the event page for all to read. In 2020, despite COVID-19, we'll continue the tradition of respectfully honouring those who have fallen. And to start proceedings, I invite Louisa Bonner, grandniece of the late Senator Neville Bonner, Australia's first First Nations member to enter Parliament. She's a member of the traditional owners of South East Queensland and also South East coastal regions. On behalf of her peoples, she brings their acknowledgement before us today through a welcome to country.
Hi everyone, thank you Andrew for the lovely introduction. I'll start by introducing the country. On my grandmother's side, who's a Yugambeh language woman, her name was Louisa Sandy. That country runs along the east coast of Queensland, from the south end of the Logan River right down through the coastal through to the New South Wales border. That's my grandmother's country. And then my grandmother's mother's country is Bundjalung, a little bit in from the coast of New South Wales, and then further in from that out towards Warwick is my great-great-grandmother. When you come back over this way, standing in Yagara language people's country, I'm a descendant of the Jagara people and the Yuggera people from my great-grandmother's side as well. So on behalf of my elders past, present and future, I would like to welcome you here today in the native language of Yagara people and say welcome. Yaraman yaraman yoraman yaraman 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 yara, elaman yoraman yaraman yoraman yaraman yara. As I stand here today to represent my people and to support those families that still live a memory that is still currently happening today when you're losing lives in the mine, we would like to offer our love, sincere condolences and support on this day, and in memory with the Department of Mines of those accidents, that we look as a community and a people and as a nation to further prevent those type of incidents from happening, losing the loss of our loved ones. So on behalf of our people, I would like to say Wanya, thank you.
Thanks, Louisa, for welcoming us all. And next I invite Teresa Harding, the Mayor of Ipswich, to the stage. Teresa, thank you.
We are gathered here today on the 19th of September to commemorate Miners' Memorial Day. Mining has a long and storied history in Ipswich, and it is a privilege to be here as the city's mayor to reflect and remember with you. Today we remember all those who have lost their lives in Queensland mines. That includes the 75 miners who passed at Mount Mulligan 99 years ago to the day, and our own fallen here in Ipswich. Today's events, like so much of our lives, has been affected by COVID-19, but the pandemic will not stop us from honouring those who have been lost. I note that this Miners' Memorial Day is being live streamed online, so that wherever we are, we can pay our respects. Queensland and Ipswich owe a lot to our miners. Coal was first discovered in our city in the early 1800s, and the first mine opened here in Redbank in 1843. 174 years later, the official State Miners' Memorial Monument was opened here at Redbank, just as coal mining in Ipswich was coming to an end. That was in 2017, and the 6 pillars of the monument will stand here for many years to come, and each name etched in steel tells its own story. I ask for anyone to come here today or any time and look around this memorial and see the names here and not get choked up. The railways, manufacturing and heavy industry were the backbone of our region and our state. Last year, the last Ipswich coal mine at Jebrapilly closed, and those industries were powered by the men and women who worked and supported our mines. They dug, built shafts and track, hauled loads, drove trucks and worked earth movers, all in really challenging and dangerous conditions, to produce millions and millions of tonnes of coal. Throughout the 1930s and 40s and 50s, Ipswich miners extracted half of Queensland's coal to fire the state's steam engines, furnaces and machines. And 2 million tonnes were produced right here in the 1980s alone. Our miners gave a lot to Ipswich and to Queensland, and some made the ultimate sacrifice. We recently marked the 48th memorial of the Box Flat disaster at Swamback back in 1972, when 17 local men, fathers, sons, brothers, lost their lives. This disaster left a tragic mark on our proud city. It was the most devastating mining accident in our history. But every miner lost across those 176 years meant devastation and heartbreak for a family and for our community. And today, we remember those parents, siblings and sons who paid the ultimate price. Today, we pay our respects to the miners and their families and friends who remember them so well. We will never forget what they gave to this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Teresa Harding. We're now going to hear from a second-generation Ipswich coal miner whose father also worked in the Ipswich coal fields for over 20 years. Trent Knack started his career as an apprentice diesel fitter in the New Hankey underground mine in 1995 and then progressed to various management roles, including general manager and senior site executive of Jebrapilly open cut mine. During his time at Jebrapilly, Trent and his team mined the last remaining coal reserves before mining operations ceased in December last year. This effectively marked the end of coal mining in Ipswich, bringing a significant chapter of local history to a close. Trent, thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. It's an honour to be here today. And as you just mentioned, I am an extremely proud second-generation Ipswich miner. In fact, I went to high school just up the road here at Bundamba, and look, I think it's pretty fair to say that I may not have been the most attentive teen at school. And in one attempt of good faith, I did have a teacher one day come to me, and he said to me that if I didn't pull my socks up, I wouldn't realise my potential, and I'd end up working in the mines. What he didn't know is that my father worked in the mines and he was my hero. So when he said that to me, I was okay with that. In fact, if we fast forward a couple of years, and I got to work at the same coal mine as my father did out here at New Hankey. He was a continuous miner operator. I was an apprentice diesel fitter, as Andrew touched on. I found out exactly what I thought. It was the best job in the world. And you see, there's something about the mining industry that you can't describe. It's the mateship, it's the camaraderie, it's the roll up your sleeves and help the person next to you type attitude that you just don't find anywhere else. It's unique. And I think when you when you have a culture like that, when incidents happen, when someone gets hurt or even worse, we all feel it. And we carry it with us. So at the end of mining at Gibberpilly last year, and I may have been the last SSE in the Ipswich fields, but I was also at the last underground mine when it closed in '97 at New Hill. And it was at New Hill where we actually we had the last fatality in the region as well. And I was on the opposing shift, and I'd just finished my day shift swing. I was walking out towards the bathhouse, and I'd passed my father and a gentleman. He was an absolute gentleman called Trevor Domerow, walking down towards the tunnel mouth. There was a man carrier located to the adjacent. And I gave them a cursory goodbye and g'day, and that was about it. And I left the mine without a care in the world. I went about my afternoon, and I was at home that evening, and I was at home when Mum received the phone call. And the phone call was that my father had been involved in a pretty nasty mine incident, and that he'd been taken to hospital with Trevor. And I remember the panic. I remember exactly what that looked like. It was 23 years ago, yet it seems like it was yesterday. And I remember going up to the hospital. I remember looking at Dad and thinking, gee whiz, he's pretty banged up. He'd broken sternum and a dislocated ankle and a few other injuries that that certainly didn't look great. But we were the lucky ones because he got to come home in a couple of weeks. And unfortunately, as we know, Trevor didn't. It's one of those things. You don't lose those memories. Those memories stay with you forever. And in fact, my dad passed away 3 years ago, so 20 years after that night. And he only ever spoke to me once about it. One night in particular, he sat down and we spoke about it, and he said, I thought we'd done the right thing. We moved the miner back 20 metres. It was back to where I thought it was safe. So on that night, I could hear the strain in his voice. So I didn't ask any more questions. I didn't want to dig up painful memories. But what I took away from that conversation was that the guys weren't complacent. They actually thought that they were safe. So it got me thinking. In that night, these gentlemen did everything they thought they could to be safe, yet the unthinkable still happened. So what can happen when we become complacent? And that is the challenge that we face. So as an industry, as individuals, as businesses, that's our challenge. Never be complacent. Some of the best advice that I've ever received is simple. If you think you've got it all under control, go back and look again, because you probably missed something. And it is so true. There is no end. We must continue to strive to make a safer workplace. It's incumbent on us to ensure that we don't repeat history, that we learn from the past and continually strive to think better, do better, and be better, so that all miners go home after every shift, so that fathers and mothers go home to their children, so that sons and daughters go home to their parents, so that husbands, wives, boyfriends and girlfriends go home to their partners. It's important that we never get complacent, that we can continue to strive for improvement in the way that we manage our risks, and that we never forget our forefathers and the people that have walked before us in making this great industry. So on this day, we remember the miners that didn't come home, and we promise that they will never be forgotten, and that we will continue to build an industry that does think better, that does do better, and that is better every day, doing everything we can to ensure that every miner goes home safe from every mine on every day. Thank you.
Trent, thank you very much. I now invite the Reverend Bronwyn Pegram from the Anglican Parish of Goodna to bring us together in prayer. And Diane and Philip will then perform Amazing Grace.
Good morning. As I speak to you today, I speak of God, the one who is the spirit of life and the ground of all being. And although I come from the Christian faith, I invite you to pray to the spirit or the God of your own tradition or none. As we do remember those who have died in mining accidents, let us commend their souls again to God's eternal peace. And let us pray for grace to live and remember until our lives end. Loving God, you are strength to those who suffer and comfort to those who grieve. We bring to you our sadness for those who have died in the course of their work in Queensland mines. We pray that the loss of their lives may not be in vain. May their spirit live on in us and in the generations of mining men and women to come. Surround us with your grace and peace. Lift up those who have fallen. Sustain those who work to rescue or rebuild. And give us the strength and wisdom to build a better world. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend, and thank you, Diane and Philip. We're now going to hear a poem written by Billy Pelling. It's called Only a Father Would, and it's recited today by Barry Watson from the Australian Workers' Union, Queensland. Thanks, Barry.
Thank you, Andrew. Only a Father Would by Billy Pelling. Life's journey we travel day by day, facing whatever comes our way. And so it was on that September date, Mount Mulligan town met the hand of fate. Mount Mulligan mine was blown away, an explosion that changed many lives that day. All those mining families, shocked and bereft, knew though they prayed, there was nothing left. Rescuers knew their comrades were lost. Still they hoped as they toiled, never counting the cost. They never gave up, they never gave in. though this was a battle they could not win. No machinery here, not invented for years. Still they used what they could, strength, shovels and fears. And they toiled, as they toiled, noticed the face of an elderly man, so out of place. Dave Hutton was there, consumed by his grief, yet his sheer persistence beyond belief. 2 sons and a son-in-law buried below. He stayed on, regardless, though ordered to go. Many were worried, and they told him to leave. His determination they could not believe. He would not be moved, even when he should. Was he facing peril because he could, or because only a father would? Only a father would.
Thanks, Barry. Our next speaker is the Honourable Dr Anthony Lynham, the Minister for Natural Resources, Mines and Energy. Dr Lynham's held the portfolio for 2 terms, and during that time he's led the introduction of stronger legislation to protect health and safety of mine workers. Minister, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. As we all stand on footsteps of millennia old, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land which we gather today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And thank you, Louisa, for a very warm welcome to country today. I also acknowledge family and friends of fallen mine workers. I know my parliamentary colleague Dale Last is listening in. I also like to acknowledge my other parliamentary colleague Lance McCallum, the member for Bundamba, Teresa Harding, Mayor, Ipswich Regional Council, Joanne Miller, my former parliamentary colleague, Reverend Bronwyn Program from the Goodna Anglican Church, the Honourable Ian McFarlane, Chief Executive for the Queensland Resources Council, Trent Knack, General Manager of New Hope Mines, and the last SSE on West Moreton Coal Mine. And thank you for your contribution, Trent. It was a lovely contribution. Thank you so much. Glenn Power, District Secretary of Construction, Forestry, Maritime, Mining and Energy Union. Barry Watson, Senior Industrial Advocate, Australia's Workers Union, and thank you for the palm, Barry. And also I'd like to acknowledge Queensland mine workers, in particular survivors of mining accidents. I begin. We should be here, rightfully remembering mine workers who have been lost in tragedies. It's right, it's just, it's appropriate. In our grief, we must gather strength and resolve to support each other, as we do, but strength to fight, to press on, to ensure that these tragedies do not happen again. We hear time and time again that mining is a hazardous industry, and that is why we're here. And that is why this state is dotted with Miners' Memorial after Miners' Memorial. This monument is a special place for many people. Here anyone can pay their respects and take time to remember their lost family member, friend, colleagues. Every year, this service provides time for reflection and a sobering reminder as to why safety must come first. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced many changes around the world, and today is different, and that's why we haven't got a large crowd here, respectfully remembering those who have gone. So to those who are watching, wherever you are around this state, thank you for being a part of this event. It greatly saddens me that since last year's service, we've lost 2 of our colleagues in the coal mining industry. I offer my deepest sympathies to the family, friends and colleagues of Brad Duxbury and Donald Rabbit. As we know, it's been 99 years since the Mount Mulligan disaster killed 75 miners. Today, we also remember the victims of Queensland other mine disasters. Collinsville, 1954, Box Flat, just down the road, 1972. Kayanga, 75. Mara number 4, 86. Mara number 2, 1994. In remembering these disasters, we're reminded that as we look to the future, we must learn from the past. Last year, as an industry, we did just that. Many of the people here watching today will have participated in the industry-wide mine and quarry safety reset. Together with 52,000 of our colleagues around the state, we all participated. As you may have heard, I'm not standing for re-election on October the 31st. After 6 years as the member for Stafford and as Mines Minister, I'm returning to my first career as a surgeon. I will reflect, however, as a trauma surgeon at the Royal Brisbane Women's Hospital, I saw many mine workers in my time prior to politics. Many mine workers. Hopefully when I return, I will see none. That is my one sincerest wish. As I told Parliament a couple of weeks ago, I'm proud to have led the greatest reforms in this state in mines health and safety in the past 20 years. Under this government, mine workers have free compulsory lung health checks throughout their careers. They have a better safety net if they're affected by mine lung dust disease all the way through to their retirement. And industrial manslaughter is now an offence that carries a significant jail term. But it still isn't enough. It still isn't enough because this year 2 more miners have passed. It isn't enough because 5 mine workers were injured in a serious incident in an explosion at Grosvenor Mine. The quest for a safe workplace never ends. And that's why I established a board of inquiry into the Grosvenor incident, as well as other gas incidents at Queensland mines. I look forward to seeing the outcomes of that inquiry and any safety improvements it generates for our mine workers. I leave the weighty responsibility for the safety of our mine workforce in all of your hands and those of an incoming government. And when I say all, I'm addressing everyone across this state watching today and everyone involved in the industry. That's employers, peak bodies, unions, the regulator, the inspectorate and workers themselves. As I've said previously, we hear every year that mining is a hazardous industry. People have been lost to tragic accidents. We must ask ourselves why. Why does mining have to be a hazardous industry? You know, why is every fatality a tragic accident? In reality, most of these could have been prevented. They're not accidents. They could have been prevented. Near enough is not good enough. I see the tears of near enough at every miner's memorial service. I witness the tears of complacency at every miner's memorial service. Why do we have to add to this total every year? Mining need not be a hazardous industry. We do not need to have tragic accidents. It's a responsibility of all of us to ensure that it isn't so. I want to attend a miners' memorial event where the speakers acknowledge victims from the distant past. No one added to the total. We think of only those, or remember only those who have perished from a long time ago. And we rightfully remember those, but no more added to the toll. Thank you for joining today's service.
Minister, thank you. I now invite Queensland's Commissioner of Resources, Safety and Health, Kate Dupreez. Kate's got more than 20 years' experience in the resources industry, including working in underground coal mines and management positions. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. I would also like to acknowledge the owners of the land of which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past and present. It is very humbling to be invited to deliver this address today. As previous speakers have noted, the Miners' Memorial Day is held on a significant date in Queensland history, the anniversary of a coal mine explosion at Mount Mulligan in far north Queensland, where 75 miners were killed, sons, dads, and grandfathers, men who never got to go home to their families and their friends. This memorial service commemorates those men and all of the 1,500 miners that have lost their lives in the Queensland mining industry. However, it is also very important to recognise the ripples from these tragic events. They continue to have deep and ongoing impacts on the family, colleagues, and the broader communities for generations afterwards. To the families and the communities, I'd like to also acknowledge the terrible impact that these events have had for you. As an industry, we owe it to the 53,000 Queensland mine and quarry workers, their families and their communities to ensure that the disaster of Mount Mulligan never happens again. And we can only do this by learning from our disasters, our fatalities, our senior accidents, and our near misses. As a young coal miner in South Africa, I, along with miners in Queensland today and around the world, benefited from the vital safety lessons shared from the disasters of Mount Mulligan, Maura, Kayanga, and Box Flat. Risk-based legislation, better gas monitoring systems, improvements in stone dusting and mine ventilation, mine safety management plans, and the valuable research work completed every year by SIMTAS has made significant improvements to safety in the mining industry. Yet we have not reached our goal. We as an industry are still hurting people. In the last 2 years, the Queensland mining industry has experienced 7 fatalities and almost 200 serious incidents, which included the recent incident at Grosvenor, where 5 workers were severely injured in a methane ignition. And my thoughts and prayers go to the miners and their families. These recent failures have forced the industry to take stock and renew its commitment to safety and health, and many initiatives have been put into place. But one of the most concerning findings from these initiatives was the number of incidents which involved identified hazards when inadequate or non-existent controls were in place. In addition, the recommendations about improving access to mine safety information and actively seeking information on how well our critical controls are managed are not new concepts. In fact, they build on the recommendations from many previous incidents, which have been explored, researched, discussed at industry conferences, seminars, and workshops for decades. Our industry needs to learn better. It is my view that the industry has the necessary legislation, skills, competency, technology to reach our goal. However, this can only be achieved by refocusing its efforts and its commitment, from buy-in from pit bottom all the way to the boardroom, to encourage open reporting of incidents, to be obsessed with investigating minor incidents and near misses, in order to ensure that we have the information to prevent failures from occurring. This industry must continue to foster a culture of sharing information and also foster our tripartite partnerships. We must also maintain a culture of non-compliance, or as we've heard I say and a few other people say, of chronic IEs. This is to ensure that every day ways to make mine workers safe are sorted out, researched, and learned how to improve. Every worker, no matter the industry, has a right to go home safe and healthy at the end of the day. And I'd like to finish up today with a quote that I think sums up why we are here. A senseless tragedy remains forever tragic, but it's up to us whether it remains forever senseless. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Our next speaker is representing the Construction, Forestry, Maritime, Mining and Energy Union. Please welcome Glenn Power.
I would like to acknowledge the traditional landowners of the land of which we meet today and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge all mining industry workers, past, present and emerging. Miners' Memorial Day, 19th of September, is always sombre, always challenging, especially for those of us who have lost friends, colleagues, relatives and loved ones. It is almost 100 years since Queensland coal mining communities were rocked to the core by the disaster of Mount Mulligan on this day in 1921, where 75 miners lost their lives. We must never forget these sad anniversaries that have shaped our communities, like Collinsville 1954, 7 miners killed, Box Flat 1972, 18 miners killed, Kayanga 1975, 13 miners killed, Mara number 4, 1986, 12 miners killed, Mara number 2, 1994, 11 miners killed. But the last couple of years have shown us that mining tragedies are not consigned to history. Fatalities and serious injuries continue to rock our communities. At last year's memorial service, we marked the highest death toll in Queensland mining industry since Mara number 2 in 1994, with 6 deaths in mining, including 4 in coal mines. Since then, 2 more coal miners have tragically been killed at work. I want to acknowledge the tragic loss of Donald Rabbit at Curra Mine in January, Brad Duxbury at Carver Downs mine last November, and pay my respects to the families and friends who are suffering these losses deeply. We also want to acknowledge the 5 miners who were severely injured in May's tragedy at Grosvenor Mine and the long journey to recovery they face. These tragedies from the past and present remind us of the price coal miners and coal mining communities have paid for the prosperity of the industry that is relied upon by the nation. Beyond the fatalities and serious accidents that make our headlines, there are thousands more mine workers who have been seriously injured at work, injured or killed on the roads, or developed illnesses and health problems like black lung from working in the mining industry. We must never forget the price coal mine workers have paid and the burden of death and injuries their families still carry to this day. On behalf of the Mining and Energy Division of the CFMEU, I can say that our union will always honour the memory, and in doing so, redouble our efforts to keep this industry as safe as possible for all who work in it. It is our responsibility to make sure that we continue to advocate in the strongest possible terms for the safety reforms required so that every mine worker can go home safely at the end of the day, enjoy their families and finish their working lives in good health. We hear so many slogans and gestures regarding safety which seem to roll freely off the tongue of so many, but don't seem to have any practical application because in reality production supersedes any safety slogan or gesture in the mining industry. Zero harm and 0 fatalities is still only an aspirational figure of speech which delivers no practical, tangible outcomes. We cannot rely solely on governments or employers in isolation to come up with the safety protections required so mining industry workers can go home and safely at the completion of each shift. Mining industry workers should have the confidence and the ability to be able to stand up and speak out without any fear of reprisals. It is time for a serious, robust tripartite contribution from governments, employers and unions. Need to come together collectively for practical solutions where safety is first and foremost without any fear of reprisals. Safety first and foremost without any fear of reprisals must be enshrined not only in the minds of the mining industry workers at the mine site, but equally in the minds of those who sit in Parliament and the mining company boardrooms. 2020 has been a vulnerable, precarious and uncertain time for everyone, with the fear of fallout of COVID hanging over us all. The persistence of mine workers has kept our Queensland industry and economy afloat. During this time, we have seen a substantial increase in union membership as workers seek protection and reassurance of the collective representation through their unions. For anyone who thinks unions are irrelevant in this modern era, I will share this piece of wisdom with you. The Queensland Mining and Energy Union has been around for more than 112 years, and we will be here until hell freezes over, when we will then see you all on the ice. Improving mine safety requires the difficult work of unions, industry and government coming together to find solutions, and our union takes this role seriously. Our members, those who literally work at the coalface, have strong views about what needs to change. They are worried about mining culture where production is valued over safety and where workers are scared to report safety issues for fear of reprisals. They are worried about the impact of casualisation of work on safety standards. We are committed to making sure their views are heard. On this note, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Queensland Mines Minister, Dr Anthony Lyon, who will be taking his leave from politics at the next election. In his capacity as Mine Minister, Dr Lynham has always made sure that the voices and needs of workers were taken seriously. He has been faced with some serious challenges in the industry, and there have been some robust exchanges working through those matters. The CFMEU Mining and Energy Union believe that Dr Lynham leaves an important legacy of mine safety reform, and our union is proud to have worked with him on these matters. I want to mention three things in particular. Firstly, the shocking re-emergence of black lung in our industry after 30 years. Under Dr Lynham's guidance, Queensland has introduced world-leading reforms for preventing, identifying and treating mine dust lung diseases. There is more to do, but we must acknowledge the substantial progress that has been made. Secondly, the expansion of industrial manslaughter laws to cover the mining industry. Never made any sense for mining to be excluded, and this is sensible, important reform that makes employers more accountable for protecting the workers' lives they are entrusted with. Thirdly, the Coal Mining Board of Inquiry. After the shocking events at Grosvenor in May, Dr Lynham listened and understood that a narrow inquiry into technical causes of the explosion was not sufficient. We need a broad look at the safety culture, systems and practices in our industry. We are committed to working with the inquiry to deliver that and drive the necessary change for our safer future. There is more work to be done to clean up Queensland's mine and industry, prevent unacceptable injuries and fatalities and give mine workers the safe workplaces they deserve. But Dr Lynham's leadership has made a real difference, and we thank him for his contribution. I'm sorry that we can't all be together today to commemorate today's memorial service. To come together as a mining community to honour the lives lost and comfort bereaved families is so important. Please know that you're in our hearts and our thoughts are with you all. We will never forget those mine workers who have lost their lives, and we will keep fighting for the living. Stay safe, and thank you all for the privilege to speak here today on behalf of the CFMEU Mining and Energy Division.
Thank you, Glenn. Our next speaker was elected to federal parliament in 1998 and became Australia's longest-serving federal resources and energy minister. He's long been a champion for the resources sector and has a great depth of experience and understanding of the resources industry. Please welcome Ian McFarlane, the Chief Executive of the Queensland Resources Council. And following Ian, Diane and Philip are going to perform You'll Never Walk Alone. Ian.
Thanks, Andrew, and can I too acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we meet and acknowledge their leaders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge all Australians past and present who've led our communities and made this country the great country it is today. Can I acknowledge the Mayor of Ipswich, Teresa Harding? Can I acknowledge Minister Anthony Lynham, who I'm going to miss, both as a colleague and a friend, and as someone I've enjoyed both in my previous life and current life working with. Anthony is an exception to the rule as politicians. He didn't do the job he's doing out of some ideological space. He did it for a reason. He did it at personal sacrifice and financial sacrifice. And he's the sort of person there aren't enough of in Parliament. He's the person who puts his community before everything else. and that's someone who will, as we've heard today already, will leave a legacy and a memory that we should all acknowledge. Can I also acknowledge Lance McCallum, and you've got some big footsteps to follow in a number of areas, including Joanne Miller, who I acknowledge. Unfortunately, Joe couldn't be with us, but Joe's family are on those plaques outside. And I was here with her 3 years ago, which seems to be just yesterday, when we opened this memorial, and I said then that every time I drive past here, and I do it every time I live in Toowoomba and work in Brisbane, so I drive past here a lot, I think of why this is here, and I'll come back to that later in my speech. Can I acknowledge Glenn Power and Barry Watson from the CFMEU and AWU? I've made it a point, along with working with government, to work with the employer representatives, and I've got a lot of respect for your leaders, and Stephen Smythe and I have had some private and constructive conversations on a whole range of issues, but inevitably safety is always the top of that list. I'm happy to work with you any day, on weekends, any time, for anything we can do to protect the workers in our industry. Can I acknowledge the Reverend Bronwyn Pragram? And finally, can I acknowledge all the friends, relatives of those we have lost, and of course acknowledge the 372,000 people who rely on this industry, and most particularly the 60,000 or more who are involved in literally at the coalface and working the hard yards in this industry. I was at the closure, Trent, as you know, of the last mine in Ipswich. We should never forget Ipswich was based on mining, grew on mining, became the wonderful city it is on mining. And we should acknowledge through that Ipswich, like so many centres in Queensland, paid a heavy price for that. And so we must, even though we don't mine coal in Ipswich anymore, we must maintain this memorial in memory and honour of those who paid the price of an industry which the Minister referred to as a hazardous industry. We all need to work every day to change that. We all need to work to meet the then ex-Minister's aspiration that he will not see anyone in his operating theatre that's the result of a mining operation. There are solutions, and I'm involved as the chairman of an innovative manufacturing research centre and as part of the METS Ignited Mining and Technology Growth Centre to find ways which we can separate men and women from the hazards, not just underground but anywhere in the mine. It will be technology that provides part of the solution, but what will provide the solution and what will be our legacy to those names that are on the plaques around this marquee is that we develop, along with that technology, a constant awareness that safety is the key and that every person has the right to go home every day to their family. That chronic unease, I think as Kate said, is something we must always possess. There is no room for thinking we've got this issue beat, because we won't until no one needs a band-aid, let alone a coffin, after they visited our worksite. We will all work to make that happen as we can, and it may be the next generation that achieves it, but that's our goal. And so can I thank all of those people on the plaques around this marquee for the sacrifice they've made, and promise them that we will continue to work towards there being no more plaques on this memorial or any other in Queensland. Thank you.
When you walk through a storm,
Thank you, Diane and Philip, and thank you, Ian, very much. And we now come to the laying of wreaths in tribute to Queensland's fallen miners. Diane is going to be singing for us during this time as well. And once the music begins, I invite the Minister to lead the presentation of wreaths and then invite others to follow to present a wreath and lay flowers or a tribute. And just a reminder that while we're doing that, if we can maintain our social distancing, that will be great. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Just to look in your eyes again, just to lay in your arms, just to be the first one always there for you, just to live in your laughter, just to see to be every one of your dreams come true, just to sit by your window, just to touch in the night, just to offer a prayer each day for you. Just to long for your kisses, just to dream of your sons, just to know that I give my life for you, the rest of my life, for you. Just to wake up each morning, just to have you by my side, just to know that you've never really far away, just a reason for living, just to say I adore, just to know that you're here in my heart to stay. For you, the rest of my life. For you, the best of my life. For you, only for you. you make up for all that you lack. It don't make no difference. Escape one last time. It's easier to believe in this sweet madness. Oh, this glorious madness that brings me to my knees. In the arms of the angels, fly away from here, from this dark cold hotel room and the endlessness that you feel. You are pulled from the wreckage of your silent reverie. You're in the arms of the angels. May you find some comfort here. You're in the arms of the angels. May you find some comfort here.
Thanks everyone for paying your respects, and thank you to Diane and Philip for that beautiful tribute to those who've been lost. The wreaths that have been presented today, by the way, will be transferred to the monument following the service for the wider community to appreciate as well. The Reverend Bronwyn Pegram will now rejoin us on the stage for a personal tribute, and she'll also call for a 1-minute silence, and that will conclude when the end of shift siren sounds.
Thank you. I respectfully acknowledge the customary owners of the land on which we meet today and pass my respects to those elders past, present and emerging. Minister Dr. Anthony Lynham, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, and those viewing online or from home or work, and of course those who have lost loved ones. Over 30 years ago, I spent 3 fascinating months as a cadet engineer in an open-cut coal mine in central Queensland. It was my first exposure to that camaraderie that an earlier speaker spoke of. Over there, thank you. And the reliance on each other that workers need when engaged in hazardous industries. It was also my first exposure to the leadership that is needed to drive what we would today call a good safety culture. I took these early insights into 25 years in technical roles, including manufacturing and rehabilitation of mine sites. I'll never forget the first fatality investigation I was involved in. I talked to distressed workers who had seen their mate die. I analysed technical data and heard from decision makers on spending, procedures and training. And I listened and wept with a woman as she told of resting her hand on the cold, still chest of her loved one and knowing that he would not be coming home to her and their children. This type of experience makes one very committed to never again. Today, my son works in an underground gold mine in Kalgoorlie. Every day I pray that he will be safe. I pray that he and all his mining colleagues everywhere look out for each other and do the right thing. I pray for generative leaders who walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And I pray for those who mourn the ones who have not come home, that they may recover their faith and trust in life, and that they may be comforted in the solidarity of remembering the others and experience healing and peace in their lives. I pray that they know their loved one is safe in the arms of God. May they rest in peace. I invite you to stand as you are able for a minute's silence as we remember those who have perished at work in Queensland mines, lest we forget. Please feel free to join me in praying the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thanks, Bronwyn. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the official proceedings. All those affected by mining fatalities and serious injuries are in our thoughts today. Thanks to everyone who's watched from home or in the workplace. And I welcome anyone in the Redbank area to visit the monument or lay a tribute in the honour of our fallen miners. I also encourage leaving a personal message on our Facebook page, which will then be transferred to our guest book. And guests here, you're welcome to sign our guest book if you're not already, our visitor book here, before you leave today. And we conclude with the honour roll of all our miners who've lost their lives in Queensland mines. Thank you for joining us today. Stay safe and good morning.